I bloody told you he'd win it, lad.
Yes, you did. How much did you win?
Let's just say it's in the hundreds, but not in the thousands.
That's not bad, not bad.
Welcome to the No Ifs, Putts and Bogies podcast. We are a no-nonsense, straight talking golf podcast discussing all the hot topics in the world of golf. This podcast is brought to you in association with Barretto Golf, a stylish, affordable golf clothing brand. Please visit barrettogolf.com for the latest offers. That's BARRETO golf.com. This podcast is also brought to you on behalf of the Golfer Gang Network. Please do go check out some of the other golfing podcasts. And actually, today we are without Mr. Harry Clark. I think he had a tooth or something pulled out earlier today, and he cannot speak. So we'll let him off for the evening. And you are stuck with me and AB. And we're going to talk about the US Open. Because what US Open it was.
I think first thing you need to do is, I've noticed you've pulled out the Puma cap. For those listening and not watching on YouTube, why don't you explain first and foremost what is on your head?
Yeah, so I'm currently sporting a Puma flat cap, I suppose, in the style of Bryson Dechambeau, Payne Stewart, and Ben Hogan style. And it's the one that Bryson used to wear when he was sponsored by Puma. And I bought this a while back. As most listeners will know, I am a big fan of Bryson. And yeah, I think I actually bought it after I turned up to a round of golf with you and two of our other mates in Cornwall off the back of what was a rather loose night out the night before. And I got the nickname Bryson Dechambeau. So I went out and bought this.
That's very true, yes.
Bought this cap to live up to the stereotype at the time. But it worked well because I like Bryson. He's my favourite player and I wanted to show my support. And actually, side note, because the Open is coming up as well, when we went to the Open at St. George's, I wore this and he walked past, smiled and pointed at me and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" And I've actually got the photo where he's looking right at me. So yeah.
We'll get that up on socials maybe. But I remember that day well. And yeah, you have always been a big Bryson fan. And of course, on our preview pod, you did tip him. Granted, you have tipped him for every major this year. So I think if you back a horse enough times, it will win. And that's kind of the same with Bryson. In fairness, so just in terms of the majors this year, Bryson's actually leading across all three out of all the players to have made the cut. So he's currently minus 28. And Xander is next on 23 under. Colin, Scotty, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood's actually done quite well without actually being anywhere near. So, Bryson has been the main man this year in terms of the majors. And, of course, you did tip him. So, yeah.
Yes, I got him at 16 to 1. Won't tell you boys what I staked in it, but those of you who know me will probably have a good guess. So yeah, was pretty happy. Also, he's finished in the top 8 at every major this year. His game has been trending in a good direction. Off the back of major golf alone, he has broken into the world top 10.
That's very true, yeah.
In the world ranking.
Mate, someone's prepared tonight.
Well, we're talking about Bryson, mate. I had to come a little bit
hell.
He's broken into the world top 10. And actually on Data Golf and one of the other random other sort of like golfing statisticians, he's actually ranked like 5th and 6th on those if they take into account like, not quite sure how they do it, whether it's like average scores and stuff like that. But his golf game is trending in the right direction. I think his general profile and game is trending in the right direction. Everyone's, well, bar one person I know, but we shall not name him. But everyone that I know is enjoying Bryson a lot more these days. I think the fans are enjoying him. His profile's going through the roof, and it was a pleasure to watch it all sort of unfold on over the weekend. Such an interesting 4 days of golf, to be honest with you. And before we sort of go right down the Bryson funnel, in general golfing terms, I have to say it lived up true to what we said on the preview podcast, where it's the toughest major in the sense of the lowest score, the sort of the higher scores tend to win even, and some of the greens and some of the approach shots, even the fairways were like just hard to hit. Like, and there was a lot of guys that were in real difficulty. I don't know if this was the opening guy out, but I turned it on at 12:30 on Thursday, and I'm pretty sure in saying the very first guy out triple bogeyed the first hole, which I kind of set the tone for the week, just for everyone in general. If it wasn't, he was the first guy sort of on TV, or they showed the replays type thing.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. I think I didn't watch much on Saturday, but I saw majority of the other 3 days, and you're right, it was a proper test. Some of it was borderline unfair. The first shot that I think of that comes to mind is on the final day, Rory hit like a 200-yard iron to the middle of the green, and it rolled off backwards into the wasteland on a par 5. So instead of having an eagle putt, he ended up with a 6.
Yeah.
That's just obviously one of them. But, still, there was some really good golf played. And at the end of the day, Bryson finished, on 7 under, 6 under, something like that, which is still like a ridiculously good score.
Yeah. Well, it was obviously better than the rest of the field, which is what matters, isn't it, really, at the end of the day?
Yeah, there wasn't that many under par at the end. I think there was only about 7 or 8. So, at the end of the day, we'll come on to the Rory debacle in a minute, but if you win a major, you deserve it. And Bryson was definitely the sort of standout player and also character across the whole week. And I think it's worth sort of going down the sort of Bryson loving now. You can obviously do it better justice than me, but he has come sort of full circle in the last sort of 18 months, I'd say. Going from sort of pantomime villain and, being a bit of an outcast on the PGA Tour, and then obviously losing reputation and things like that for defecting over to the live side. But he's completely turned around his personal brand, all through his own work, all through his own social media, and just doing what he wants to do. He doesn't give a shit if people find stuff weird. I know that he was interviewed about floating his golf balls like they used to do way back in the day, and that's the type of marginal gain stuff that ends up making you champion. And I guess from my point of view, back in the day, I wasn't really that into him, but he's hard to ignore, both in terms of how good he is and just all the stuff that he's doing online with the fans and things like that. So fair fucks to him. I'm on Sunday night. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching, and I, was absolutely stunned. But a few days later, on reflection, fair play to him, and he's a worthy champion.
Yes, there's a few things I want to pick up on. First and foremost, he is without doubt the number one trailblazer, icon, innovator in the game of world golf at the moment by miles, not even close. He's designed his own 3D clubs. Just put that into perspective. Most guys don't, just do what their caddies tell them to do within reason. And, even like the pros will go and, if you've got the TaylorMade team behind you, someone from TaylorMade will sort of suggest, you should do this, you should do that, the club at this loft. These are the ones that we're going to use. And a lot of them will be tied into commercial deals that mean they have to use certain clubs. When he went to live, he actually cut, for one reason or another, commercial deals fell through for him, and he cut ties with some other ones. And, we won't get too much into that. But what that's allowed him to do is develop basically a set of clubs that is getting the best out of him, for him, by him. They are literally a one of one set of clubs. You cannot purchase them. You cannot get them anywhere else. He 3D prints them and designs them with his team amongst himself, which in itself is just outrageous. And he's designed them to a specific way that he's come up with scientifically to get the best out of his game. That's point number one, which in terms of like innovation, moving the game of golf forward, growing the game of golf and giving us all something to talk about and do that, it's just, beyond what anyone else in the world of golf is capable of, without a doubt. Secondly, you were talking about like the things like the balls that like leads into the mad scientist kind of thing, which is, again, for those of you who haven't heard it, he floats every golf ball he uses and puts a dot on the bit that's at the top. I think
top side, yeah.
So then that means the ball he will then draw the line through the dot and have the dot on the top when he putts, that the ball goes end over end the most symmetrical way it can possibly go, I think is the right coin of phrase. So it makes the balls aren't all 100% balanced in the middle. So he tries to find the most balanced spot of the golf ball in order to leave the smallest amount of deviation when he putts the golf ball. No one else in the world of golf, I believe, has that much attention to detail to do that to every golf ball that they use. So again, that's another thing. One way which I think he has improved his game of golf and improved his profile is through the use of his YouTube channel. Now, a lot of people in the professional world of golf may look down on YouTube golf and look down on the likes of your Goods, your Rick Shields, your Grant Horvats, even the Wes Bryans and the Brian Bros, those sort of guys of the world, and say it's all a bit gimmicky. But when he's doing challenges, hitting off front tees, trying to break 50 in scrambles with people, he's playing shots like the shot that he had to play out of that bunker to get up and down on 18. And he's giving himself the confidence and the ability that he knows he has to do that, because he's challenging himself on a regular basis to do these things. And we can all sit there and go, oh yeah, it's a bit of a laugh. He's using kids clubs on this day and he's doing that on this day. But a lot of them will genuinely help the psychological aspects of his games. And he's spoken about it previously about players of a certain standard playing off front tips to get used to shooting lower scores, and doing various other different things on the course. He actually said in his post tournament interview, in his youth, he used to drop balls in the toughest lies possible and just see where he could hit them, basically. And I don't know if you saw on the first hole of the last day, his tee shot landed straight in a divot, and it was like, obviously it was in the middle of the fairway, but it was like a bit of an unfortunate lie. And he popped it straight on the middle of the green, which, sometimes when you're in a divot or you've got an awkward lie, a lot of people won't do. His final round, a lot of it, quite frankly, went wrong in a lot of ways. And he was scrambling around and hitting it out the rough.
Yeah, so just on that one, he cracked his driver, didn't he? So he was arguably the best player over the first 3 days, was leading for part of it. And then, starting in the final group on the final day, but he did something either the night before or in the warm-up before this final round, and it cracked the face of the driver. So he was using a different driver. And so before I'd heard that, when I initially tuned in after the England match, I wasn't watching him hit any fairways. He was just spraying it all over the gaff. But he got himself out of trouble every single time, and he holds some unbelievable putts. And like I said, he thoroughly deserved it, and just all of the stuff around it as well. So his links to sort of Payne Stewart and him being his inspiration, and the flat cap, and then we obviously mentioned Payne in our preview as well. And then just he was giving out his golf balls. He stayed for hours and hours afterwards doing autographs.
He was actually signing like autographs whilst leading, like on the way around. Like I don't know if you saw, there was one young lad in a wheelchair, and he stopped and signed his cap like whilst it's like on the final round. It's like 4 or 5 holes left, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and obviously he got a massage in the trees.
Yeah,
like it was absolutely box office. And in fairness, he interacted with the crowd, as you say, when he was playing, but also, especially on the final day when Mathieu Pavon was his partner, he was, calming the crowd down and making sure they were respecting him. And even as much as on the 18th, when Pavon could have tapped it in to give Bryson like his winning moment on his own, but that wouldn't have been fair to Rory. And the crowd got up and started giving Pavon a bit of shit. And, in that moment when he's 4 feet away from becoming US Open champion, he was more concerned about his opponent and fairness in the game. And, honestly, I'm part of the, sort of, I wasn't that fussed by him back a few years ago. And, he did used to do a few things and say a few things that were stupid and stuff like that. But he has gone full circle, in my opinion, in the last sort of 18 months. And even in the last 2 or 3 months with his major performances. And he is now very much at the top of the sport.
He's without doubt one of the faces of the game globally, which is in some ways mental, considering that, I don't really know what the viewership figures for Liv are, but like a lot of the time, no one even watches him play.
Quite low.
No one even watches him play. Like, I don't know what the percentage of golf fans are that watch golf in general to live golf, but he is without doubt pretty much the biggest name in golf. He carries the majors even when he's not winning them. People turn up to watch him play. He's the one that moves the needle. Like, I know Scotty's, had some outrageous performances and won a lot, but he's boring, isn't he? He ain't the, Bryson's a maverick, and that's what moves the needle. And even on, I think on the second or third day, I think it was, when he sort of said to his caddy, like joking, he goes, "I'd love to drive this, but the tee's actually too far forward or something." And it's like, I'd actually go fly the green, basically. And the guys around the tee box were like, going, "Oh, go on, Bryson, get the driver out." Blah, blah, blah. And he I think he took a 5-iron out, and then he went, "Oh no, I could probably get a bigger club." He put that back, and he pretended like he was getting his driver out, and everyone's going like, "Oh," like that. And he was like, he was playing with the crowd, like in the middle of a major golf tournament that he's in contention for. You just don't see other golfers do that. Like, he had the place in the palm of his hand for a lot of the weekend. And I think he's become not only like an icon of the game, the sort of face of the game in many ways at the moment, in terms of the brand of golf that he plays and the character that he is, but he's become a true gent of the sport. And he's very complimentary of other golfers. And sort of want to touch on, it came about that circulated after the win. So first of all, he was very complimentary about and emotional about the loss of his own father in dedicating that US Open to his own dad who couldn't be there. It was on Father's Day. He said a lot of touching words. He also had a moment about Payne Stewart, which is the 25th anniversary. And he's a student of the game as Bryson, and knows the game of golf inside out, and follows the history of the sport really well, and said some real touching words there. And I think in general, he spoke really well about Rory in not on the field speech, but in the post-match press conference. Said that, he's one of the best players to ever play the game. He's a true great of the sport, and it was an honor to go up against someone like that on the final day and to get over the line is like incredible. And he wouldn't have wished some of the putts on anyone. And thought he spoke really articulately, but it's sort of been brought to the world's attention afterwards that when he came second a few weeks back at the PGA, because of the nature of the win for Xander, he was on the range warming up in theory for a playoff, or what was potentially going to be a playoff. And he was watching on the big screen as and when Xander sunk what was eventually the winning putt. And the first thing he did was put clubs in his bag, and he walked back to the course, and he went and congratulated Xander before he was about 10 yards off the 18th green, and he shook his hand and congratulated to them. And one thing, and it pains me to say this in some ways because I'm a big Rory fan as well, but he didn't carry himself, Rory, with the most I don't know what the word is, but he didn't carry himself all the best. He looked very stressed.
Sportsmanship, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. And he, we've all seen the memes flying around of him in the scoring room at the end, waiting for it to come in. And he basically turned around, got in his car and went home. And I've seen a few takes on this and, he's mentally exhausted and, he was right to do that if he didn't feel emotionally in the right spot to speak to. It's been a training 4 days. He's obviously waited 12 years for it, blah, 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 which is fine. But look, I was brought up that when you win, be gracious, and when you lose, be even more gracious, right? So, or whatever the saying is, when you lose, be gracious, and when you win, be even more gracious, type thing, right? So, I think whatever the saying is, right? I can't remember what the saying is, but you know what I'm getting at, right? There's ways to win, there's ways to lose, and the way in which he lost wasn't ideal for him. I do think in some ways, bar Bryson's bunker shot, in some ways on the last day, he lost it rather than Bryson won it, which is mental to say.
Yeah, for sure.
But he could have he's also a face of golf and has been for a long time and is without doubt one of the biggest names in the sport and one of the biggest names in the history of the sport and has a massive global presence and global brand. And I think he could have carried himself with a little more grace and decorum in the defeat and popped out, shown his face, shook his hand, even if he didn't want to speak necessarily to the media. The golfers are his peers and his colleagues and people that he's competing against on a regular basis. And I think that he should have shown a little bit more respect for what Bryson has achieved over those 4 days than probably what was shown.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I get why he did it, like you said, but yeah, I'm sure in due course he'll reflect on it and he'll make it good. And he's allowed to sort of have that little blip, shall we say, in terms of his etiquette, because he does carry himself phenomenally well across every other scenario. But yeah, just before we move on, we'll move on to Rory in a bit more detail in a sec. But just we've got to get a couple stats out there. So I'm going to chuck one at you first of all. So with that win, Bryson is basically alongside Bobby Jones, Jack Nicklaus, and Tiger Woods as the only players to win the US Amateur and then 2 US Opens.
Love it.
So 3 of the big boys he's now alongside, the 4th golfer to have done that. And then another one that incorporates also Mr. Brooks Koepka. So between them, they've won 4 US Opens, but in terms of since they defected to live, right? So if you think back 18 months, 2 years, whatever, since they defected to live and were banned from the PGA Tour or whatever happened with that, had their membership revoked, they've actually won more PGA Tour sanctioned events than Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Ricky Fowler combined.
What's that? Just 2 then?
No, they've won more event. Like they've won more event. Well, I guess 2. Yeah, it must
That's
be.
what I mean. Yes, just
yeah. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah. So it must be. Justin Thomas has won 1 major, and that's it. And none of them else. They've not won anything else.
Mental, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's a couple of little stats for the listeners to take away. So okay, let's move on then. On to Rory. So obviously another one passes by, another missed opportunity. Like you said a minute ago, he had it in the bag, and he kind of did lose it more than Bryson won, shall we say? 4 bogeys in the last 5 holes or whatever, and then obviously 2 inexplicable putts that he missed. So the stat, I mean, it's not my stat. It's been flying around. I think everyone's probably seen it because somebody posted it almost immediately. But before, so the first miss when he was on, I think it was the 16th hole, he was 496 out of 496 putting inside 3 feet this season even.
Yeah.
So nearly 500 times he's putted from that distance. And if one of those final two goes in, he's at worst in a playoff. If they both go in, he wins by 1 stroke instead of loses by 1 stroke. And that is
mental
madness. And
do you know what
I honestly couldn't believe what I was watching.
I was shouting at the TV screen. I was at home on the recliner, wrapped in a blanket, physically shouting at the TV screen because I also couldn't believe what I was watching. And it's without doubt purely psychological because he played some fantastic golf throughout the whole week. And it's a strange one to say when you don't win, but in some respects, I actually think he played the best golf throughout the week. And it's literally 15, 16, and 18 that have cost him a major, really, it's just absolutely outrageous. I just want to touch on, so since obviously we all know the wait for the major goes on and all this sort of jazz, and hasn't won one since 2014 or whatever it was, right? So his major record since his last win involves 4 runner-ups, 11 top 5s, 21 top 10s. So that's 21 out of 37 majors. So that's over 50% of the time he's in the top 10 and he just can't get over the line. It's absolutely fucking mental. He is like inches or millimeters away from being like, I'm sure many people consider him an all-time great already, but 4 runners up, like I'm not quite sure what all the losing margins are, but like, if he had 4 more majors, that's fucking eight majors, or like a couple of them, when he come third at the Open 2 years ago, or whenever it was.
In 2022 when he was leading on the final day, and then
another one that he probably should have won. I honestly think, like, it's easy to say now, but things could have gone so different. We could be talking about Rory having like 10 majors by now, and then you're talking about him literally being like an all-time like GOAT. Like, whereas at the moment you're talking about whether he's better than, or whether Brooks Koepka might be the player of this generation, for example. And you got Phil Mickelson that got more majors than him, obviously slightly different eras, but they're still playing now. And I don't know. I just don't. I'm not really.
The ones recently where he's come sort of in the top 5, as you say, or he's been runner up or whatever, he's kind of not been there and made a late charge and then come up short, maybe with the exception of St Andrews when he was leading, and then Cam Smith just like out of nowhere shot 8 under or whatever and on the final day and pipped him. But that one, when he's got it in the palm of his hand with 5 holes to go and you lose by 1 stroke because you've missed 2 3-foot putts, that is going to haunt him for a long time, I think. And as good as he is mentally, and as actually just ability wise, he'll bounce back at the Open, we hope. But it's madness what it does to your mental game, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just to put it in perspective, Bryson actually dropped a shot on the day. Like, he's actually finished on +1 for the 4th round, right?
Yeah.
And with 4 holes to go, Rory was on -8. And I think Bryson was on -5. I think
he had a 2 shot. Yeah, he picked one up, and then So
there was 3 shot difference with 4 holes to go.
Yeah,
and he fucked it. Like, I'm actually genuinely a bit. I know we're on a podcast and we're in a game of talking here, but I'm a bit lost for words. I don't.
It was kind of. It's reminiscent of. So there's been some other sort of recent meltdowns, shall we say? I don't necessarily like that phrase, but you know what I mean. People that had it in the palm of their hand and then have just completely imploded. So the first one that springs to mind was Adam Scott in 2012 when he was leading by 4, I think, with 4 to play, and Ernie Els had finished hours before. He wasn't even warming up, I don't think. He was just chilling in the clubhouse, and all of a sudden he's the Open champion because Scott's dropped 4 shots or 5 shots or whatever in the last few holes.
Yeah.
And then the other one was when Jordan Spieth was trying to defend the Masters. So he won in 2015, and then in 2016 he was leading again. And on the final day is with the famous meltdown that he had on the 12th, and then the 13th, 14th, whatever, and the par 5 when he put it in the water, and that allowed Danny Willett to win the Masters out of nowhere. So yeah, I think that Rory's one is up there just in terms of the pure shock value of him missing those putts. I think he actually played an unbelievable round of golf. He just missed 2 ridiculously easy putts.
The other one I can think about recently was our boy. Well, I think he's on live now, but Mito Pereira. He started.
He had one.
Final round of the PGA on -9, and the winning score was -5, and he actually he put it into the water for a double bogey, so he was actually leading on the last hole. He's on -6. All he needed to do was make a par. He put it in the water and ended up flying the green, I think, and then doubled it. So he ended up on -4. So he didn't even make the playoff. They ended up in a playoff with Thomas and Zalatoris. But
that's a great shot.
Just drop 5 shots on the final day when you, I think he started 3 or 4 shots clear. Mental stuff, really.
Mad. But Rory will move on to the Open, which I believe is at Royal Troon.
So he's released a statement, hasn't he? Which
so he's going to have a break.
Basically, says he's going to have a few weeks off to reflect on things. So he said, yesterday was a tough day, probably the toughest I've had in nearly 17 years as a golf professional. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Bryson. He's a worthy champion and exactly what professional golf needs right now, which I think we can all agree with. Oh, he actually said, I think we can all agree on that. As I reflect on my week, I'll rue a few things over the course of the tournament, mostly the 2 missed putts on 16 and 18 on the final day. But as I always try to do, I'll look at the positives of the week that far outweigh the negatives. As I said at the start of the tournament, I feel closer to winning my next major championship than I ever have. The one word that I would describe my career as is resilient. I've shown my resilience over and over again over the last 17 years, and I will again. I'm going to take a few weeks away from the game, process everything, and build myself back up for a defence of the Genesis Scottish Open and the Open at Royal Troon. See you in Scotland. So when is that? I think that's like 3 weeks, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the Open's probably about a month away, so the Scottish Open will be the week before, I would have thought. So, yeah, about 3 weeks or so.
So the Open's July the 18th, so bang on a month. So, yeah, it'll be 3 weeks. So, bit of family time. Obviously, he's had some stuff going on in his personal life as well. I don't really like talking about people's personal lives, but it has been very well publicly documented. He filed for divorce, and then the divorce got called off. Don't really know the ins and outs of what goes on there. But yeah, we just want a world of golf where Rory McIlroy wins more, I think is the safe message from this podcast. We like to support Rory. Obviously, I'm a huge Bryson fan, delighted that he got the win, and his bunker shot on 18 was absolutely clutch. But, you know, the way that Rory melted down, was not nice to watch, I don't think, in some ways. Took away from the shine of it a little bit. But overall, generally think what an absolute major tournament it's been. It's been unreal to watch. Great for the game of golf. You couldn't take your eyes off it. Think of the action that's happened in the last 4-5 holes. And that was like that all week. People were dropping shots. People were picking up shots. People were rolling off the green, hitting extra shots out the rough. It was crazy stuff. Just something that we haven't spoken about, because I've just mentioned it there. It's just reminded me. I saw a tweet from this guy called Lou Stanger, who's a golf stat pro. Basically, Bryson's bunker shot on 18 was from 55 yards. He hit it to 3 foot, 11 inches. The chances of hitting it inside 4 feet from 55 yards is circa 1.7%. So he thinks it will go down as one of the greatest clutch shots of all time.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
I think that is it's quite something when you do think about it. It was a hell of a shot. And as I say, I think that stems from some of, I'm not saying if everyone goes and plays YouTube golf, then they're going to do it, but it certainly helped his personal brand. It's helped his golf. I think it's helped him in many more ways than one. I do believe it's helping him grow the game of golf. The bloke's got over 700,000 subscribers. I believe he's one of the most popular golfers in the world right now, in every aspect of popularity. And I think the PGA Tour need to wake up to this a little bit, because I think there's some kind of rules where full tour card members aren't allowed their own YouTube channels and stuff like that. I think something along those lines. This is a big thing when they went to live. I remember
Right.
Bryson talking about something along those lines, because he didn't start his YouTube until he was at live. It's something to do with their contracts or something like that. Because you look, I think the only reason that
Copyright laws, probably.
Bryan Bros, Wesley Bryan isn't a full tour card holder or something like that.
Yeah.
He got some sort of exemptions, like he qualifies into some events and doesn't qualify into others, and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, I think a lot of eyeballs are on YouTube Golf these days. They get a lot of views. They've got a lot of subscribers. Rick Shields on his own has got like 2 point whatever it is million subscribers. Bryson's at 700,000. You've got your Grant Horvats of the world that are over 500K. Good are at like 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 million. These guys can't be unnoticed. People need to take note of what's going on in the general landscape of viewership. People are streaming more. People are watching free content more with social media and YouTube and internet. And I think the PGA Tour need to wake up to this a little bit and allow players to have a little bit more freedom in that respect. Because it's like, if you look at the profile of Bryson's character at the moment, I think that there's probably other characters on the PGA Tour that we aren't getting to know as well. As a consequence of not getting the access to them that Bryson can give us. And things like, he's had
you get it through Full Swing, but that like a short snippet, it's not constant content that Bryson produces.
People like Tony Finau profile went through the roof off a Full Swing episode with his family and all stuff like that. And your Max Homers of the world, Justin Thomas's, the Justin Thomas Jordan Spieth episode, Series 1. People love all that. And I think what Bryson's done really well is he's entered the world of YouTube golf by doing traditional YouTube content, or more traditional YouTube content, by working with creators. Like he does videos with Garrett and Grant and whatnot. But we've also seen him just scramble with like Phil Mickelson and Anaban Lahiri and one of Phil's teammates. And he's had a match or a scramble with Sergio Garcia. And he's bringing other like big names from golf into the fold and giving us access to those guys as well, which is also great to watch. Like, when him and Mickelson are betting on every hole, it's great content. Like that's something that's previously been pay-per-view events when it was Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson in America. People had to pay $150 or something to watch that, and you can watch it on YouTube on Bryson's channel for free. So I think the landscape of golf viewership is changing. The audience is changing. People have access to streaming stuff for free a lot more these days. So the traditional means of watching golf, although we love watching the majors, is changing. And I think that the PGA Tour probably need to wake up and give some more freedom out to a lot of their players and a lot of big guys. Like someone like a Max Homer or a Victor Hovland, or these guys are cool guys that people would love to see more of. Obviously, we see a lot of Rory, but your Tony Finau's of the world, people like that. I'd love to see if they had a YouTube channel and what they were coming out with, and like little one-on-one matches, challenges, all that sort of stuff. I'd lap that up.
Yeah, I agree. That's a valid point.
So yeah,
I think, I don't think we've got much else to sort of add, have we? I think we can
only away from the US Open, the Olympic field has been announced today, I believe.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure how this works because some countries, like America, has like 4 players, and then other countries only have like 1 or 2. So I believe you could be eligible to have up to 4 players in it, but not every country has entered. So for the UK, we've got Tommy Fleetwood and Matt Fitzpatrick. Obviously,
Yeah.
Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry are there representing. They've given Rory an Irish flag.
Yeah, so Rory and Shane represented Ireland last time, and Fleetwood was also on Team GB. But he played with Paul Casey. Well, he didn't play with Paul Casey. Paul Casey also represented Team GB. So it's nice to see Fitzy there. But yeah, there's some big names. It's going to
In
be
general, I think it's a really strong field.
yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's just like close to like a signature PGA Tour event type vibe. It's got a big feel about it. Don't really know how. Obviously, it's only been in the Olympics twice. I'm not really sure how general golfers feel about it. But I think it would be quite cool to say you're an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah, well, this was the thing in 2016 when they first brought it back, and everyone, because it was in Rio, loads of the big names pulled out, quoting the
Zika
virus.
Yeah.
The Zika virus was their excuse, but it ended up being a decent tournament, and obviously Justin Rose was the first person to get the gold. And then last time was also amazing. Xander, at the time, that was his biggest sort of achievement, winning that tournament. But you had an 8-way playoff or something for bronze. So it was, competitive, and there was a lot of people trying to win medals. So, I think this is the strongest field that's ever been.
It certainly looks strong. Just to give people a flavour of it, I don't know if they're in some sort of ranking order or whatever's going on here, but 60 golfers: Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Ludwig Aberg, Wyndham Clark, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, John Ram, Matsuyama, Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Pavon, Straka, Day. That gives you a little taste. Some other selected names. You've got Moronk, you've got Shane Lowry, Corey Connors. You've also got Joaquin Niemann. And there's a few other names knocking around as well. Thomas Dietrich, Højgaard. An old favourite of DB's, used to bet on this guy quite a lot, Abraham Answer. Be looking forward to watching him again on terrestrial television, competing with some big boys. Obviously hasn't featured in a lot of majors recently because of his live status. So looking forward to seeing him back there playing.
Yeah, that's going to be mint.
Should be good. But other than that, I think I've got off my chest everything I needed to say.
Yeah, agree.
Delighted to see Bryson back in the winner's circle. I hope there's many more majors for him to come. I think what this tells us all as well, just to sort of finish on this, is regardless of what anyone thinks of LIV or PGA or whatever it is, there needs to be some sort of resolution at some point, somewhere, because I want to see Bryson on my TV as much as possible, and I want to see him playing against the best golfers in the world as much as possible. And someone who I mugged off last week, actually, thought he was lucky to get an invite, actually ended up finishing in the top 10, I think, which was Sergio Garcia. So again, I finished tied 12th, so not far off it. But again, these guys on LIV, a lot of them are major winners. They know how to win. They've been around. They're big names of the sport. And when they do turn up and play, often they turn up and play, a lot of them. There's a lot of them that don't make the cut and whatnot, but that's golf. A lot of big names miss the cut from the PGA Tour every week. And I just want to see everyone back together, because in a world where you can have someone in the top 10 in the world rankings of golf based on 3 tournaments, I just think it devalues both products, because they're not getting the opportunity to compete with the best golfers on a regular basis. So something just needs to be done and fixed. And I just want to see them all. I want to see the band back together, mate. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, fair enough. Can't argue with that. So yeah, well, let's wrap up then. So we'll link up again. I think the next time we do a record, it will be after our big head to head.
So we are
Bradford
playing on the weekend.
on Saturday. So stay tuned next week to see how we got on. And
Away territory for DB, so it's already at a slight disadvantage, but AB's got some psychological problems around the course at the moment. So I think the course has already beat him up a little bit. So maybe it is advantage DB. Who knows?
we shall see.
Oh, sounds good. Right. Thanks very
all.
much for listening, guys. And stay tuned for next week's episode.
Well done for being prepared today.
Yeah, I had some points, didn't I?